Hello and welcome to a special episode of The Racing Report. I am your host, Rob Peeters, and today we are ranking the top 5 moments of the IndyCar 2024 season. We're ranking the top 5 moments of what was a pretty crazy season in IndyCar with all the happenings and everything that broke and contract news, the crazy controversies that seemingly were happening almost every single week in the series. We're going to rank them all. We're going to rank all the top 5 IndyCar moments from 2024. So first, be sure to subscribe to WTHR on YouTube so you get notified anytime a new Racing Report episode comes out. And also be sure to follow me on social media at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. So you can find out whenever a new Racing Report episode is out. And you can also, shamefully, follow my thoughts on all the happenings in the world of motorsports. So let's start off. So coming in at number 5, our number 5 moment of the 2024 IndyCar season is IndyCar leaving NBC for Fox. Now, this was a huge development when it happened. It shocked most of the motorsports world. NBC had been with Fox basically de facto since 2012 when they took over the Versus network. They took the Versus network and turned it into NBC Sports Network, and Versus had signed at the time a 10-year deal to broadcast IndyCar races, be the exclusive cable home of IndyCar races between 2009 and the 2018 season. Now, then in 2019, NBC signed on for the full season. They became the official cable and broadcast home of the IndyCar Series, and it was assumed that they would just continue because you had some of the best commentators. Everybody raved about the coverage. Lee Diffie was pretty much, a lot of people liked Lee Diffie, and of course Townsend Bell and James Hinchcliffe adding in excellent insight and knowledge when it came to being an analyst. The coverage was outstanding. It took the sport seriously. It promoted the sport. There were Sunday night football promotions all the time, especially when it came to the Indy 500. But it was very, very interesting when IndyCar made the announcement, hey, we're going to Fox. And then you looked into the details and you realized that Fox gave them an offer they couldn't refuse. Because keep in mind, IndyCar has been not resistant to streaming, but trying always to maximize the amount of viewers that they can get. And I think they recognized that their viewers were not coming in on streaming, they were coming in on the broadcast side of it. So like races on big NBC were getting so much more reach for IndyCar than races on Peacock or even USA. And so I think for that reason, when Fox said, hey, we will put you guys on over-the-air television for the whole season. Not one single race is going to get kicked to FS1. Now, we're still going to use FS1 and FS2 for your practice qualifying and also Indy Next. But don't worry. We're going to have all your races on broadcast television. That, to me, is an offer that IndyCar can't refuse, especially when you think about the fact that Indy Next, in its current iteration, has never had the full season broadcast live. NBC Sports Network did broadcast select live lights races, but others were tape delayed. Yeah, tape delayed. Crazy. That isn't a thing of the past. All Indy Next races are going to be on FS1 or FS2, in addition to every practice and qualifying session, which again was only available on Peacock. So again, when it comes to reach and views, and I understand most people don't have cable anymore, but most of IndyCar's audience still watches through cable and still watches through over-the-air television. Now, the question is, are the people who watched the Indy 500 on NBC, are they going to make the jump over to Fox? That remains to be seen. That's why it's the number 5 on our countdown of the top 5 IndyCar moments of the 2024 season. Now, let's get into number 4. And the number 4 moment of the 2024 IndyCar season is Tom Blomqvist. Tom Blomqvist's short tenure as an IndyCar driver is truly, I think, one of the bigger stories of the season, because it set off a domino effect that I don't think anybody really anticipated after it happened. So Tom Blomqvist was originally signed to run the full IndyCar season with Meyer-Shank Racing. Now, this was primarily due to the fact, at least it was rumored at the time, that because Meyer-Shank was not going to be running IMSA in the 2024 season, they needed somewhere for Blomqvist to go in order to keep him under contract and in order to not be in violation of their contract with him as a driver. So they said, okay, well, why don't you run a season of IndyCar? And it did not translate. Blomqvist is a great sports car driver. He had some success in Formula E. I say some, but, you know, his prowess is in sports cars. That's where he shines. Very little open wheel. I mean, he has open wheel experience, but, you know. And he had a disastrous Indy 500. Crashed in the first lap, first turn. Also made Marcus Ericsson's Indy 500 finally come to a merciful end after one corner. But after that, he was gone. He was replaced. They moved Elio Castroneves into the car, which went about as well as you thought it would. Castroneves still legend. Could probably get a fifth Indy 500. But if you're going to have him at Detroit, it's not exactly the way it was 24 years ago. Anyway, moving on, it kind of triggered this snowball effect that also worked out for everybody. And that takes us in to our number 3 moment of the 2024 IndyCar season, and that is the McLaren IndyCar driver carousel. All right, so in 2023, McLaren announces, hey, we've signed David Malukas to come drive for the team. We're gonna have David Malukas drive this number 6 car, okay? And it's a big deal, and everybody's happy. It looks like everybody's praising the move. It's probably going to be a good move, right? Malukas is a great up-and-coming driver. He had a great season with Dale Coyne Racing. Probably he's destined for this, right? Well, fast forward a couple months, Malukas injures his wrist, hurts his wrist in a biking accident. Well, now he's not ready. He's not recovered to race in the opening race. So McLaren have to pull a backup driver. And they say, okay, well, Callum Ilot's available, so we'll sign Ilott to run St. Petersburg. And they do that. But then they decide, hey, you know who's available? This hot French hotshot over in Europe, who's a Formula One prospect and is set to do Super Formula this year, Théo Pourchaire. Let's go get him. We think he can really replace him, since we don't know how long Malukas is going to be out. They bring him in, and he performs quite well. And then he's not ready to run the Indy 500. So they have to bring back Callum Ilott, who then runs the Indy 500 again for him. And then Pourchaire comes back into the car. Now, at this time, you learn that McLaren has dropped David Malukas because of a clause in the contract that said if he wasn't available for X amount of races, was 4 or 5, they can fire him. And they did just that. They exercised their right in the contract and said goodbye, sent him his papers, and pushed him out the door. So now Pourchaire comes in, and he's like, okay, well, I'm the guy. I'm going to get the full-time seat here. You know, I've been impressing, you know. And then suddenly it all comes apart. Tony Kanaan, who's special advisor to Arrow McLaren, says, guys, you got to trust me on this. Nolan Siegel is the next best thing. You got to trust me on this. Nolan Siegel is the next best thing. Zach Brown listens. Gavin Ward listens. They say goodbye, Teo. And hello, Nolan. Nolan Siegel, who was in a pretty tight points race in Indy Next and was scheduled to run a handful of races with Dale Coyne, now is thrust up into IndyCar, abandoning his Indy Next championship, and is now thrust into super high expectations because Tony Kanaan, of all people, has vouched for him this highly and put his own career on the line to vouch for him. Top three moment. Top three moment for sure. All right. Now, the number two, the second most crazy IndyCar moment of 2024 has got to be the Agustin Canapino saga. I don't even know where to begin with this. Basically, for background, Agustin Canapino, an Argentinian driver, was driving for Juncos Hollinger Racing, and in the last season, there was a situation in which drivers were receiving death threats, online death threats, like on Twitter and Facebook and the like, from Argentinian fans. Now, are they Canapino fans? Are they just fans? Don't know. Point is, most of them, if not all of them, spoke Spanish and were from Argentina. At least that's where their IP address is pinged. And Juncos Hollinger knew about this last year and didn't do anything. Really didn't address it. At least Ricardo Juncos didn't. Canapino didn't address it either. Fast forward to later this year, Canapino and Teo Pulcher get into a little on-track incident, and Teo Pulcher reports to McLaren, hey, I've got a bunch of death threats in my mentions. So, McLaren condemns this, obviously, and kind of reaches out and encourages Juncos Hollinger to do the same. They don't. Takes them a while. Takes them way longer than it probably should have to actually release a statement condemning that. Fast forward, and this was before, this shows you how much Twitter's changed. This was before you couldn't see anybody's likes. Back when you could see people's likes, people were discovering that Agustin Canapino was liking tweets that indicated he didn't care, and that anybody who receives an online death threat should just not care and walk it off and not take it seriously. I don't know how you not take a death threat seriously, but yeah. So fast forward a little bit more, and now Canapino is shown the door. They finally said, okay, we're not doing this anymore. We're not, Augustin, you've done great for us, but we got to go. We got to go in a different direction. And they do. And they sign Connor Daly. Connor Daly finishes out the season. He finishes P3 at Milwaukee. And now he's got a full-time ride with the team for 2025. Indirectly, it saved Connor Daly's career somehow. Anyway, all right, let's wrap up the show with the top moment of IndyCar's 2024 season. And that is, yes, you might have noticed I am wearing a Kyle Larson Memorial Day double shirt. And that is because the number one moment is Kyle Larson's commitment to the Indianapolis 500. And I think that's something that really needs to be talked about more. And you can argue whether or not he deserved the Rookie of the Year award. You could argue that Christian Rasmussen won. You can argue that Kyle Larson won. Doesn't matter. You can argue that until the cows go home. But the fact of the matter is, Kyle Larson went out there and prioritized the Indy 500. And did it probably cost him a championship? I think in the long run it did. It definitely cost him, at the very least, a chance to compete for a NASCAR championship. But he committed to the Indy 500, and he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to wait the rain out, and I'm going to finish this race. And one way or another, I'm going to get myself to Charlotte, and I'm going to take over, and I'm going to try and run as much of the Coca-Cola 600 as I can. And I'm going to try and stay eligible for the chase, or for the playoffs, do whatever he can. And obviously it didn't work out on the NASCAR side, but on the IndyCar side, it's insane to me how good he looked all month until he made one tiny mistake, speeding on pit road. Which, to be honest with you, it's a rookie mistake, and it's a mistake with somebody who doesn't typically use a pit lane speed limiter. It was kind of inevitable, if you really think about it. But even then, even despite the slight mistake, it was a huge moment. I mean, the Indy 500 suddenly, it always has been an event and always will be an event, But the Indy 500, out of nowhere, shot up in popularity more so than I think I had seen it in several years. And I'm of the opinion that the Indy 500 is growing back up. It's on an upward trend back from when it went down to its lowest, right? And it's been on this upward trend for several years now, right? And I really think that this Larson participating and then again committing to participate again next year is pushing that event higher. And now you have other NASCAR drivers saying, yeah, no, I want to run the Indy 500 someday. I'd love to run the Indy 500 someday. You have all these different drivers that are just from all different disciplines wanting to try the Indy 500 because they know how much of a challenge it is and how prestigious of a race it is to win. Even if you have a DNF in an Indy 500, you qualified, right? Like if you qualified 20th and finished dead last, you still qualified for an Indy 500. That's still an accomplishment that a very small percentage of race car drivers can really even say. Especially in nowadays, you look at all the different drivers that exist in all different forms of motorsports. So when you add all of them up, from the dirt world to the karting to junior formula to your late model asphalt Saturday night short track, your little Hornets, a literal stock car, which is just a 98 Ford Taurus with the interior all ripped out and a V8 stock block engine dropped in there from some Lord knows what kind of car. Very few drivers can say they've attempted an Indy 500, and Kyle Larson can simply sit here and say, oh yeah, I've won a NASCAR championship and qualified in one of the top 3 rows at Indianapolis. And won Rookie of the Year there. And basically brought an insane amount of eyes to the sport, to the race. Because Kyle Larson, if you think about it, it's NASCAR fans, but it's also dirt fans. It's also fans of sprint cars and it's getting that sector of fans to get more interested in IndyCar again, and vice versa. And continuing that kind of relationship. It's great for the series. It's great for the sport. And I know I might sound a little bit Tony George-ish there, but it was a great moment, and that's why it makes the #1 IndyCar moment of 2024 on this list. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this list. If you have any additions, subtractions, if you agree with it, you don't agree with it, let me know. Be sure you could find me at rpeeters33 on X. That's RPEETERS 33, and then be sure to subscribe to WTHR on YouTube whenever a new Racing Report episode comes out. So thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great off season, and we're looking forward to the IndyCar season returning in March.